All right, let's just jump in yeah, why not?
Because the clock's
Uh,
ticking. The rest of the DCU is going to be here soon. We gotta predict it before it arrives.
yeah, there actually is no clock this time. I think we'll be good, so we can be
Okay.
as long winded as we want. Welcome to Confident Predictions, a show where Chris and I will make confident predictions about the world of superhero movies, sci-fi, horror, and anything you can think of, and we are never wrong. Joining me as always is Chris. How's it going, man?
What's going on? I appreciate you adding horror right at the very end of that list, as far away from you as possible. I appreciate that.
We'll eventually get to horror because I was looking at the calendar and we have 28 years later in January. Stranger Things coming up in November. I don't know if that does that count as horror.
I mean, yeah, I feel like if you have something called a Demogorgon in your show, you probably get to wear that badge with honor.
Yeah, I was thinking about Stranger Things and if I'm even capable of making predictions for that show.
Yeah, well, the thing about that one is it's like I don't. Well, we don't have to get into it now, but like every season feels like sort of like a slightly larger and it's like sort of remasked version of the previous season, but I just still like it. They bring in a few new characters I care about, and usually get
Yeah.
rid of them in glorious fashion.
Yeah, no, I like the show a lot too, but I just as far as where the final season will go, um well, I mean, we will make some confident predictions, but at this point,
Yeah,
I'm still formulating them. So
yeah. I have to rewatch it for the fourth time before I can make any really solid predictions here.
awesome. Well, as you said, we've done two episodes on Peacemaker. The finale aired a few weeks ago, and you and I have talked a little bit off mic about it. But let's share some thoughts about the finale and how our predictions went. But maybe just let's start out with just the initial thoughts on the episode and the season.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, as far as predictions go, briefly before we dive into it, we were
Yeah.
right again.
Uh
Once
huh.
again, nailed it. I so this is interesting, and I think I want to say on the first episode I talked about it a little bit, first or second episode. I do feel like I was right about what James Gunn's interests are, and that they seem to be somewhat divergent from what audiences' interests are, or at least what their expectations are. Maybe is a better way to put it. Like he paid off a lot of really interesting stuff for me in terms of like character arcs and stuff like that, but he did none of the stuff that is sort of I don't know what you call it, catnip for
Yeah.
the internet folk. And so I do think that there was, and maybe it's a little bit his fault. He might have hyped up stuff and spoke about it in ways that got people confused and excited. But I overall I really liked it. I was surprised by the final moment. I was surprised how big a thing that they put in that really felt like, and I guess it makes sense. The show's about Peacemaker, but it's a huge piece for the DC universe that didn't get a lot of like. There wasn't a ton about it in the actual episode. You know what I mean? Like the
Right.
the revelation of salvation. I think it's cool, and I'm interested to see where it goes. But he's true to his word in saying that this is a show about Peacemaker and the characters that are around him, and they were fully the lens throughout the whole thing. And I think that ultimately might be what people had the biggest problem with, is that it stayed that way all the way through. You know, I think
Yeah.
that people wanted like a wider lens at some point, and it didn't quite come. So
Yeah, I think he said something very on the nose when he said that season one was about Peacemaker and season two was about Chris Smith. And so, I I mean, I don't think that's the kind of thing you want to tell your audience at the beginning because, I mean, that's part of the story. So, that isn't, um, a narrative that I think that you want to communicate because you want the audience to figure that out as you go. But like throughout the season, you and I saw a lot of comments online of like, how come he's not wearing his costume as much, or how come there aren't as many like, cool action sequences, or you know what I mean? Like that was a
yeah,
recurring thing throughout the season, episode to episode, and then when you get to the finale, and both just the content of the show itself, but then also his commentary about it in interviews, when you realize, well, the intent was to make a show about Chris Smith. That all makes sense now, like in
yeah.
retrospect, right?
Well, the irony would be, because I talk all the time about the idea of. We spoke about it the other day. I kind of like went off a little bit of a sort of like an angry tangent about how, like, especially people who do this kind of stuff on the internet, like, are
Yeah,
kind of robbing themselves of the ability to like enjoy a narrative because they're searching for what the next thing is or what the seed is. But what I think is actually funny is the way that people do that. They were totally unprepared for how Peacemaker ended. But if they were doing that with the stuff that James Gunn wanted to deliver, they would have known all the story beats because James Gunn can't shut up about all of the character
Right.
stuff. And so like he kind of did lay a lot of that out in a way like I wouldn't say I wasn't surprised, but like it landed pretty much the way he kind of has talked close to about through, all of the references that he made. They're veiled references, but it's all pretty much exact. You could have extrapolated very clearly what the arc of the season was based on his comments about characters.
Yeah, I think that I was actually going back to our text to see what predictions you might have been wrong about, and
Thanks.
I think you probably had a different idea of where Adebayo's story was going to go.
Mhm.
I thought it was a great resolution to her arc, but and then I think we both had an expectation that Peacemaker might become a bigger part of the DCU, either through as a member of the Justice Gang or just as an accepted hero in the world or something. And that didn't really come to pass, I don't think, in the way you or I maybe thought it might. So I'm saying that to say that, the show still had narrative surprises, and that's, what we
Yeah.
enjoy about the show.
Yeah. Well, and also it did do the thing I think that we expected it to do, but not in the way. Like I think we
Hmm.
thought he was going to join a team or he was going to get some sort of status. Maxwell Lord would come back and say he wanted to
Right.
fund him, but instead he went to the place that is apparently going to be an enormous sort of like linchpin for the center of a lot of the stuff that he's gonna that Gunn is planning for the DC universe moving forward. So like he's not the character that's the most important, but like he's literally in the place that is now maybe not the most important, but like
Yeah.
certainly central and key.
Well, let's talk about Salvation a little bit because that is how the season wrapped, and we can go into what our predictions for the episode were, which were recorded maybe 3 weeks ago or longer. Uh, but I did listen to them to remind myself of what we said, and so and just to recap, we both made predictions about who the big bad of the season was going to be, and again, that does sort of speak to not necessarily our expectations of the season, but just kind of the general expectation of how a season like this might
Yeah.
wrap up. So we both talked about big bads. Okay, one last prediction for Peacemaker season 2, episode 8. I predict that the big bad of the season will be revealed in the finale, the person that Rick Flag Sr. is reporting to, and that person is going to be revealed to be Gorilla Grodd. Now, the reason I think that is because Grodd was teased in Creature Commandos, and also if it leads into Man of Tomorrow, I think it'll be interesting if the person that a human and metahuman team up to fight against is neither a human or a metahuman, but a talking psychic gorilla. In mine, I made a prediction that Gorilla Grodd was going to be revealed as the big bad of the season, and that was a bit tongue in cheek. I mean, I think it was. I had read a reminder, just looking at speculation. Somebody had reminded me that Gorilla Grodd had like a little cameo in Creature Commandos, I believe. Um, it was like very minor, I think, but so I was like, oh well, since he's already seeded that character, then maybe there's an opportunity for Gorilla Grodd to come back in a bigger way, once it's been teased in the universe. Obviously, that didn't come to pass. And then your prediction, which I think is it may be interesting to dive into. You had a thought that maybe Amanda Waller was going to come back, and that it also might tie into a larger multiverse story that has to do with the Anti-Monitor or something like that.
Okay, my predictions for the final episodes of season 2 of Peacemaker is we will learn that Flag is actually still reporting to Waller, who is secretly still in charge because she helped him heal from his broken back that he got in Creature Commandos, and he made a devil's bargain with her. So she's actually pulling the strings from the shadows. She ordered him to get access to the QUC because before she was fired, they got intelligence on the real big bad of the DCU, the Anti-Monitor, the being from Crisis on Infinite Earths, the one that has destroyed a bunch of multiverses. So they're basically trying to find out where he is and stop him, and the best way to do that is to be able to get access to other multiple dimensions. But Argus, when they go in there, they get in over their heads, and they get trapped while exploring the QUC, and the only one who can help is Peacemaker, who is reluctantly recruited out of the jail he's sitting in to save his friends, which he does, and as a result of his heroism, Maxwell Lord returns because he heard about this, to offer him a spot on the newly expanded Justice Gang roster.
Maybe you're taking a big swing. I'm curious your thoughts on that. But the Waller part of it, I think, is still very interesting. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, so I think it's quite possible. It feels to me like it's definitely Lex Luthor's idea, but it feels like a thing that we could see Waller absolutely getting pulled back into.
Yeah,
Because I
definitely.
think Lex would probably say that Waller was right with a lot of the ideas that she had. He probably wouldn't have been thrilled about the idea that metahumans were being used by the government, but
Well,
she was not a fan of them. She was perfectly happy
yeah,
to make them disposable, you know? So, like, I think they seem like they could be simpatico in some ways. So I
yeah.
could see her folding back in.
I don't think it's really a contradiction, or I don't think it's not a nitpick. It's just, but it is interesting when you think about Luther as a character in Superman. Using the engineer, creating a clone of Superman. So like he obviously has metahumans, on his payroll,
That is true.
but he's controlling them, right? And that's it, to your point. That's similar to Amanda Waller. I mean, she employs metahumans, but has an exploding chip in their brain.
Yeah. No,
So
that's a fair point. They're very utilitarian with the
yeah,
reasons for the metahumans to exist. Yeah.
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 Um, so
I do think, well, it's funny that I use the word utilitarian because that's actually the word I was thinking about regarding James Gunn too, which is like
mhm,
regarding the multiverse, which is
yeah,
I think he kind of sees it as a tool to tell a different story. Like the idea of salvation, like them going there and leaving people, it feels like the multiverse was the way to get to a big story that felt like it was actually trapping people in a place that we couldn't get to. Like now that we know we've got the lanterns, that we've got Superman who comes from another planet, just having salvation be on another planet, we can get there with characters
yeah.
we've already met. We could theoretically get there. So the idea of having it be another dimension seems to me more utilitarian of the idea that like, oh, it's believable that like even Superman couldn't save them, or even the lanterns can't get there without the U.S. government allowing it. You know, so I do think that there is a utilitarian idea of utilizing the multiverse as like I said, as more of a prison to be able to
Yeah.
tell a different, bigger story elsewhere.
Yeah, and I do think, to his credit, I think it was an interesting narrative trick. I think to say, okay, the quantum unfolding space has 99 doors in it, and that isn't necessarily the limit of dimensions. That's
Yeah,
the limit of how many. And but then even with that number of 99, like they couldn't unlock most of them. Like the ones that we
yeah.
saw were the ones that could be unlocked. So
Yeah.
I think that
And in
still
truth,
leaves
we don't even
open.
actually know who created the quantum unfolding chamber either. Like, is
Right.
that a way station and there's more than one of those? Or, yeah, who
Hmm.
knows?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I don't think we're going to see a classic multiverse anytime soon. Like, the either the DC one or the kind that where we just get, characters from different, cinematic universes or anything. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But the way it is presented, it still leaves open the possibility for different kinds of dimensions that aren't just, zombies or whatever. You know what I mean? I think that
Yeah.
that possibility is there. But to your point, I don't think it'll be used. But who knows? Like down the line, if they want to use a dimension in that way.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, he has as much as gone on the record saying he always loved Batmite and Mr. Mixosploitic
Hmm.
or whatever. Like, you have to establish alternate realities in order to bring them in character wise. Like, they
Right.
don't exist on our plane. So you have to cop to it at some point if you ever do want to be able to do that, you know?
So the show did conclude. The reaction probably was more mixed than you probably would have thought, because I think a lot of people have been pretty high on most of what James Gunn has done, both for Marvel and DC. When it comes to the expectations, I think I had a thought that it went that basically um, I think the muted reaction definitely did have to do with Salvation itself, because it was the kind of thing from the comics that it is a pull from something that was in the publishing, but it isn't one that like people either knew about or cared about in a big way, and that's not to say that it wasn't a good story choice, but I just think that it just landed in a way like, oh, okay, like that's that's cool, but like not what I was expecting, or not something that I could like drive so many theories or whatever, right? I think that's
Yeah.
kind of where I kind of thought a lot of the muted reaction came from.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You pointed something out I thought was really interesting, which is that does seem to be Gunn's MO to a degree, which is like he sometimes likes the shape of things, but he wants to fill it with something else. Like the
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, is kind of the shape of a thing, but the characters were very different from the way they are in the comic book. Like the stories were not exactly standalone, but very different from the arcs of a lot of the stories. It was one, I would say, it was one of the few continuing stories inside the MCU, where each one of the entries built upon itself and had a larger mythos, but that larger mythos wasn't exactly one to the comic in much of a very significant way, you know?
Guardians is a great example because I was thinking about it, and Guardians 1 ends with a tease of Peter Quill's dad. You
Mhm.
have Yandu saying, he's a fucking asshole or something like that. I can't remember what he said.
Yeah.
And so that is a tease because readers of the comic know that, Peter Quill has his dad is like a ruler of Spartax or something. I can't even remember what the comic book origin he has. So it is a tease for the next piece of the story. But then it's really great that he ended up not using the comic book version. He used Ego, the Living Planet, which in retrospect was a great choice because I think more people know Ego, the Living Planet versus Peter Quill's canonical dad.
Yeah.
So I think it was actually a great choice in both ways. Like one, the tease, but then two, subverting the tease with something even better.
Yeah. And also just a weirder character, which is really James
Yeah,
Gunn's jam. It's like,
yeah,
that's a bizarre thing. Let's do that. It's a giant planet with a face and a mustache.
yeah. But back to my idea because I think it is something that I think he's always going to make the choice that interests him as a storyteller, and that totally makes sense. But I don't think he's immune to the idea of teasing things that have wide recognition. And my example of that is, when they announced Man of Tomorrow, they announced it with three illustrations from comic book artists, and in all three of them, Luthor is wearing the Luthor suit. And so we don't know anything else about Man of Tomorrow, the story. I mean, we have guesses and we have a few things that he said about the story, but the reason there was like widespread excitement about the launch of that project was because of what Luther was wearing. And so I think there is this great thing that, these creators can do to bring, to create this excitement is to like nod to those things in the comic books. And it can be used to really great effect. And I think that's, again, why I think that like some of the just kind of, whatever reaction to the Peacemaker finale was like this. Well, I'll say this. There were some people who really ran with the idea that the Salvation tease had to do with Darkseid, the New Gods, Parademons, because that's what the comic did. I never ever thought that that would be the case because it just didn't seem like where the story would go. But yeah, that was something a lot of people ran with, right?
Yeah, and well, and one of the things you said that you do like about the recent, I guess you would call it sort of post Peacemaker circle
Mhm.
that he has done, like the appearances, is that he has not been coy about
Right.
being like, no, no, I'm not interested in that.
And
Like
I don't.
normally you'll get the political answer, oh,
Yeah.
we love the character of the whatever, and we
Right.
definitely have plans at some point in the future, whether it's now or later, and they do the cute thing, and he was just like, yeah, I don't see him as the big bad.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Big Bad, and then we'll just talk about DC, the
Yeah.
future going forward.
Do we? By the
I,
way, do we blame Joss Whedon for that because he
yes.
used the
Yeah.
term "big
Yeah.
bad"? And okay, that's what I thought from Buffy, right?
That's definitely where that came from. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think there is a big bad to the DCU. I mean, we both, kind of jokingly made our predictions about who the big bad is in our Peacemaker conversation. But, I mean, as far as like there being a Thanos, like, I just don't think that's in the cards. I think if anything, Lex Luthor is the big bad. I think that his story will probably continue and evolve. I mean, maybe he ends up becoming the leader of a Legion of Doom or something like that, or a secret society of supervillains. That could potentially happen, but I just don't think that there's an alien despot or something that is going to, all the heroes have to unite to defeat him. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like if people were actually predicting things based on what they think would happen, like will actually
Hmm.
happen, not versus like what is interesting, what's comic accurate. I think observing Gunn's career previous to this would probably have clued them in that that is not really a thing of interest to him. Like when you look at, I think when you look at the microcosm of the Guardians franchise, but also a lot of his movies, he's very interested in the idea of villains being relatable
Yeah.
to the same degree that heroes are, but also not being a monstrous thing that can't be beaten. I mean, I guess you could argue that Ego the Living Planet was difficult to beat, but not really, like because he had hubris and he literally had ego, you know what I mean? That was what was used against him. But
Right.
he doesn't seem to be the kind of guy that's like we need something enormous to make it feel like there's stakes. I think he thinks that human stakes are more interesting, and
Yeah.
that's why I think you're right about the Lex Luthor thing. I think he has even said, like, I get where Lex Luthor's coming from. He's a
Right.
bad guy, but like I understand that, and I
Yeah.
don't think he cares to try and crack something like a Thanos. You know, like I think he knew from the comic that it's a good thing they changed what Thanos is because in the comic Thanos wanted to kill everybody because he had fallen in love with the personification of death. You know,
Right. Right.
and I think
And
that like
I was gonna say they hadn't even cast Aubrey Plaza yet as Death. So
exactly. Yeah. So who is this mysterious woman he loves?
exactly.
But the thing about Gunn that I actually like a lot is that he feels like he needs to understand the human factor more than the epic factor. And
Yeah.
that's why I agree with you. I think that there are stops along the way for a large story that he's telling, but oftentimes I think of him in terms of like a lot of film noir movies where like so much of what is the problem is created by or in some way responsible from the people that are involved in the story themselves. It's very rarely like a giant monstrous thing from out of the nowhere in space is going to cause a problem. We have to fix it.
Right.
You know, it's usually like Dan fucked up again. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue. So, so given that, um, we know a couple of the things that will be coming out in the next few years, but the bigger roadmap of where the DCU story is going, we have this thing called Chapter One, Gods and Monsters. That is the overarching story of this, era of the DCU story. He was asked in an interview recently if the story will continue into Man of Tomorrow and if that will kind of conclude this story. And he said, no, I mean, part of it, I mean, it's going to continue in Man of Tomorrow, but it goes a lot further than that too. I think, just kind of creating the idea that, this is a long-term story that could span 5 to 10 years, right? Um, so given that, how are you feeling about where we're currently at in the story and how you feel about like where it could potentially go?
Well, my favorite thing about where we are is that it feels like it's very difficult, I think, sometimes. And it's the thing I like about J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of Babylon 5, is that he's very good at making it feel like you've been given information, but right before it or simultaneously to it, you were also asked a bunch of new questions. So by
Mhm.
the time you're given a thing that feels like it solved the last thing, there's another thing that you don't know the answer to. And I do feel like what I like about his introduction of salvation and then knowing that the next couple of stories, Lanterns and Supergirl are both cosmic stories, he has opened up the door for this to be a much bigger world. But I don't really know in what capacity that's going
Yeah.
to be a thing in the next stories. And what I like about that is that as opposed to, oh, I don't know how any of this stuff connects, like that's exciting to me in that I don't know how any of this connects. I'm really not certain. And that's a nice feeling in an era where I was it the first of the new Star Wars trilogy. Like there was a leak of a plot that literally was almost beat for beat the exact film that ended up coming out. And
Yeah.
one of the things I like about the vibe of the new DCU is like nobody, as many swings as they could have taken, would have been able to predict the specifics of the Peacemaker storyline. And given that, I feel like I feel like there's intention on that. I think there's intention to make it interesting and to go not necessarily be twisty because I don't think it's just twist. It's just like what if we did an interesting thing that isn't necessarily the most expected thing, and so no one's really going to chase that. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that we could have there's a cosmic element, and then we're going to get two cosmic stories, and there's very possibly no connection whatsoever from either of them in a direct way to what transpired. This huge thing that we learned from the end of Peacemaker.
Yeah, no, my expectation is that Supergirl is a pretty contained story. It's inspired by the comic run. I think it might have an element that ties into our larger narrative, but I kind of expect it to be pretty self-contained. Lanterns, he has said, has a connection to the larger story, but my feeling on that is that it's going to be maybe a tease, like versus the reveal of the big bad, if there is one. I think that there will be things revealed in Lanterns that will have greater implications. That's kind of how I feel about that one. But what I do think is, uh, like, I do think it is a bit of a miss on the DCU part because comparing it to the first 5 years of Marvel, um, they had an easier time because at that time, nobody had done a cinematic universe like that they were about to do. And so they
Yeah.
had this amazing opportunity to just say, okay, our next four movies are Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, Avengers, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that that like audiences like immediately understood what that roadmap was and what they were building to. And then at the end of Avengers, they teased Thanos. And then that gave them this roadmap for the next like following 6 years or whatever, right? To say, okay, you've seen Thanos, you know what his story is. So we're going to tell stories that like are all over the place, but you kind of know that at the end of it, we're getting to this, bad guy.
Yeah.
Um, I would never want the DCU to follow that same formula, obviously, because that would be boring and uncreative. But there is this part of me that is like, um, I don't want to see individual members of the Justice League get their own movies and then become the Justice League. But there are
Yeah.
just so many things in the DCU that could be like laying groundwork for that I'm like, I'm not expecting it to see it in Supergirl or Lanterns or Clayface. So our next, kind of bite at the apple is going to be Man of Tomorrow, and it's like it's 2 years away, or you know what I mean? uh,
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
so there's
No,
that
and
part
that's
of
a
me
good
that just
point.
as a fan, where I'm like, oh, I want it now, you know?
Well, and it also what you just said though also makes me think because not necessarily that Marvel was schematic about it, but they
Hmm.
did say here are the characters, and all these characters are in a group, right? So the next movie is that group, and when we introduce that guy, you know where it's going.
Hmm.
What's interesting for me about DC is like you said, well, we won't know for two more years about where we're going to go with the directions of this like set of characters we're talking about, like these big
Yeah,
ones. But truth be told, aside from having been told that there will eventually be a Brave and the Bold and there will eventually be a Wonder Woman, there's been like I wouldn't put bets on there being a traditional Justice League
yeah.
in the DC
Well,
universe. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know that
yeah,
that's necessarily an interest of his. I have no idea. And will we get them all in one movie eventually? Yes, I think we will. But like the thing I kind of like about it is that it
yeah.
feels iffy. Like he seems like a loose cannon in a way that's exciting to me and maybe trepidatious to everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think what I would counter with is that I'm actually really excited about a non-traditional Justice League, and so like even building towards that is really exciting to me, and I want more of it,
Oh, I
So
got you.
like
So
if
like
they're
you would
eventually,
go for like a Justice League International or sort of like a Giffen vibe or something like that.
yeah, and I think that if that is something that is in the cards, if because there's a part of me that thinks it's probably likely that there will be some formation of a Justice League International or something that doesn't have the. I think I could. Here's a confident prediction for you: the Justice League in this DCU is not going to be Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash. Like that is just not Aquaman.
Yeah.
That version of the league won't be in this universe at all. Like I feel pretty confident about that. But this other group of heroes that is Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, Mister Terrific, um, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Fire and
Matter
Ice,
Eater, what have you.
maybe. Yeah, I think that these characters could form a league, and that sounds really dope to me. Like,
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. And so I think that not knowing, like, I guess, that's why I say it's a bit of a miss because you could get so much excitement about teasing the formation of that team or other teams. I mean, there are other teams in DC Universe,
Yeah.
but our next bite at the apple is going to be Man of Tomorrow, and it isn't even guaranteed that that will be an element of Man of Tomorrow. you know?
Right. Although, I mean, I guess you could argue I don't know if you consider Green Lantern to be one of the
Mhm.
big ones that you don't think is going to make the Justice League, but we're getting two lanterns in that show.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
three lanterns technically. And who knows who else? I don't think they're going to just like backdoor pilot a Justice League in that, but there is the element already of them there being what do you call it, the core there. So like
Hmm.
we are talking about another team, and so I do feel like there is room for there to be track laid that maybe won't get driven on yet, but could
Yeah.
potentially be in that one.
Well, that said, I think Aaron Pierre did react to the Man of Tomorrow announcement on Instagram. A lot of people took that as just confirmation that he's in the movie. I think there's a chance he is. I mean, I don't know. There's no way to know. I think he's going to be a big part of the DCU going forward. I don't know if that's as a member of a Justice League or just as a solo hero that pops in here and there. Either way, I mean, I think that's a great casting and a great character.
Yeah, no, I love Aaron Pierre. I think he's fantastic. He was great in Rebel Ridge. I do wonder though, is it funny that like one of the other major characters they're talking about bringing back in Man of Tomorrow, like of all the characters they have at the DCU, is like so a second Green Lantern is
Yeah.
the other thing that we're getting.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
Wonder Woman, no Batman, but we'll have two Green Lanterns.
Yeah. And then it's actually funny that now that I was thinking about this the other day that next year is going to be great for the DCU because I think there's Lanterns, Supergirl, Clayface. Um but of those three, like one third of them is, Clayface, which I have no expectation that has any connection to anything other than maybe just introducing the idea of Gotham City,
Hmm.
So like out of those three properties, like one of them I think is like completely probably not connected to anything and in a good
Yeah.
way. But again, just as a fan, I'm just yearning for more DCU stuff.
Yeah, no, for
So
sure. And I think Gunn has been pretty straightforward about that too.
yeah.
Like he even said, it wasn't part of our plan. It was
Right.
just a really good pitch and we wanted to
Hmm.
make it because it was good. And I like him being straightforward about that because in a way it feels like him sort of, I don't know, hedging his bets in terms of like, I don't want you guys to get excited that this is the, this is
Yeah.
the Force Awakens and then we're expanding from like this. You're not going to get a bunch of teases of all the other characters that are going to appear in Gotham. This is about this thing.
Yeah. Well, I guess bringing it back to predictions of the DCU as a whole, um, I think this story will continue in a path that is continuing the story of humans versus metahumans. One interesting way that that's playing out is in the formation of Checkmate, which was at the end of Peacemaker. I want to get your thoughts on this because it is a little nitpicky, but that's what we're known for, I think. Is he has
Is
said,
that what we are known for?
yeah, 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 yeah. Equally. So anyway, he did say that the formation of Checkmate was of interest to him because it is a new player on the scene that isn't Argus, which is government funded. It isn't the Justice Gang, which is led by a corporation. Checkmate is this third thing, right? But my question is, what is it though? And to me, that's like this huge question mark. And I think that it obviously isn't a corporation the way that Maxwell Lord is the president of a corporation. But what is it though? Like, is it just a kind of nebulous, do-gooding organization? Is it a for-profit organization? Like, what
Right.
actually is it? And my expectation is that I don't actually expect them to get into the nitty-gritty of that. Like, I think the next time we see Checkmate will probably be in Man of Tomorrow. I think that Flurry will be there as an agent of Checkmate, and he's going to be, assisting or in the background, or I think he's going to be an element of that movie. But I don't think we're really supposed to really question. Well, they have this magic bag of money, which was Vigilante's garage or whatever, right? That's what they are,
Yeah.
and that's
Which
totally fine. The reason I ask is because he does position it as this third thing, and I think that's interesting. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I listen. So there's a lot of interesting things to me about Checkmate. One of them is that I don't know anything about them from the comics.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah,
the era that I read was not really a presence, and I haven't been reading in recent years. But what it does interest me is the thing that you mentioned, which is this is yes, it's not corporate, but also it was founded by blood money from drug dealers
right.
that was stolen by a
Yeah,
vigilante. So I
yeah,
do think there's something very funny to that, but. I mentioned this to you, which I think is fascinating, which is I have never felt like comic books have very properly addressed the idea that superheroes is a business
right.
and like people get paid somehow. Like I understood how Luke Cage made money. That one was very clear. He was a hero for hire. You gave him a certain amount of money and he did the thing.
Yeah,
How does that work with Checkmate? And
right.
how does that make you necessarily different from like being funded by Maxwell Lord? The difference is you're getting paid by one rich man to do what he wants, as opposed to
Hmm.
getting paid by a bunch of different rich people to do
Right.
whatever they want. So, and if they're not, like you said, how does a charity that's that expensive run? How does that even happen? And I do wonder, is that the kind of question that this universe will answer? Because it didn't bother to answer why is your super dog wearing a cape? You know what I mean? Like, so I do wonder, like, how much do they want us to just know, here is the emotional intent of this, and you don't need to worry about that stuff? Because let's be honest, we don't even have a good answer for how Superman pays. Well, I guess we do with Superman, but like, in the
Yeah,
Marvel
yeah,
universe, nobody worries about how the fact that they don't really have alternate identities. So how
right.
are any of them paying the bills?
Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
that's
I
where I'll
I
leave it.
agree. Checkmate, I think, is going to be great moving forward because, well, okay, again, just as much as I'm excited about the Justice Gang eventually becoming Justice League International, or just seeing however it evolves. I mean, we don't know, but I think it's safe to say it will evolve, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we saw them recruiting for new heroes in the first episode of Peacemaker, so
Right.
that will evolve somehow, and that's exciting to see. I think Checkmate is equally like exciting to see how that will evolve. Um, and I think bringing it into the universe, as a result of the 11th Street Kids, I think is fun. Um, but yeah, I think I don't know. I'm excited to see kind of how that plays out, right?
Yeah, I'm also I always like the idea that you said it's what is this third thing, because
Right.
I do like the idea that, well, yeah, there's this one, the government, and then there's like so we don't really have a religious version
Yeah. Right.
of superhero characters, but there is sort of like those are the three entities that exist like in our real world. You know what I mean? There's like the religious world, there's the government world, there's the private corporation world. I don't know. I mean, I guess charity could be a fourth arena, but like that we don't know really what checkmate actually is in that third arena. You know what I mean? Like we don't know what that third space is and how it will fill it. So there is something interesting to be found there because we kind of know what the other two are and therefore what their goals are. We know what a government organization is always going to do, which is to protect itself, and we know what a corporation is going to do, which is like, it worries about its stockholders and making money. I don't necessarily know other than the good, like what is the third, what is the motivation for the third organization and how does it further its own interests.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that um, Checkmate in the comic books obviously has a history, and it's bigger than the 11th Street Kids, and it has, there have been lots of pretty big name characters as a part of Checkmate, and so that is another interesting thing to kind of think about in the future. Like, will we see agents of Checkmate who are like known superheroes? Like that could be really
Right.
cool as well, and known metahumans.
Yeah. Or is Adebayo, is she gonna like pull her mom off the bench
Yeah,
because she can't work anyplace else now?
that's right.
Any last thoughts about the DC universe regarding what we've seen and where we think it's going? I think I'll say this. This is a meta
Yeah,
note that I've observed, which is you can watch in real time James Gunn learning how to do his job a little bit better in terms of the publicity portion of it, the marketing
right.
portion of it. I think I don't want to say learned a lesson because I don't actually think he did anything wrong. I think he just underestimated how much people were going to hang on every word that he said. I think I don't think he's going to do less press, but I do think he is going to be a little bit less hyperbolic in terms of the way that he talks about upcoming projects, solely because I think that he can recognize that a little bit of what was made the final Peacemaker a letdown, the final episode, was not the episode itself. It was the expectations that had been created based
Yeah,
on what I think were ultimately slightly misunderstood things that he said. Not necessarily taken even out of context. I think sometimes like he gets very excited and he talks about stuff and he doesn't finish a sentence exactly the way he wanted. Well, guess what, man? The internet is going to take all of those pieces very seriously when you say something.
yeah.
So I do think one of the things we will start to see is that we will maybe get less. We'll get more. We'll just as much conversation, but probably less plot related and character related stuff. I think he likes to talk about themes quite a bit. I think he's going to talk a little bit less about character and story arcs in between now and Man of Tomorrow because I think he recognizes he may be burned some goodwill a little bit.
I think a big part of Peacemaker, I mostly liked the season. I do think that it had some issues, telling the story that he wanted to tell. Some of it was, like you said, as a result of things he teased that um, they created expectations that, rightly or wrongly, weren't, met with, what the show actually was. But I think bigger than that, like I liked the world going forward because this was like kind of a messy start, I'd say, for the DCU. Because all three of the initial projects were James Gunn projects, and I think he said in one of the interviews we listened to that he was basically writing Peacemaker season 2 while they were making Superman. You know,
Yeah,
I think in a perfect world, like he would have handed off Peacemaker season 2 to a writer's room, and I think what I'd love to see for the DCU going forward is James Gunn, like really like handling those tentpole events in between all of the TV shows and other movies. So Man of Tomorrow is like this big tentpole, next step on the journey. And then, but surrounding it is, an Amazon show or Booster Gold or, another kind of like out of left field Clayface idea, or you know what I mean, just these other
Yeah.
things, right? And then Man of Tomorrow, big success. They announce 2 years later a third Superman saga, or some other corner of the DC universe, but is it equally a big tentpole that is James Gunn led? You know what I mean? Like those kind
Yeah.
of markers along the way. I think that would be really cool, and it's kind of my hope for the DCU that it can kind of like position itself that way versus. And I think it will. I think it was just kind of a fluke that it had to kind of start with all of his led properties.
Yeah. Well, and I think them bringing Dean Lorey on as the showrunner for season 2 of Creature Commandos is
Yes,
sort of
exactly. Yeah,
emblematic of that being the right direction, and also the announcement that they don't have any plans anytime soon for a third Peacemaker season.
right.
Like it feels to me like if he's going to address that stuff, it's going to happen in other places. It's not going to be another season of this. Which I love Peacemaker, but I also know like if James Gunn is going to have to pull back from creating everything. I would like his focus to be on, like you said, those big ones,
Yeah.
as opposed to like I like Peacemaker, but I don't need a third season if you're going to do that stuff in other places.
Yeah, a great example of that. I think a lot of people are expecting and hoping that there may be a Checkmate series. I think that'd be a great thing to set up, a showrunner and a writer's room to execute on. I think that'd be really amazing.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but yeah, that's kind of how I feel about
Is it
where things might go.
Is it your confident prediction that the thing that they haven't announced is the Checkmate series? He kept talking about how there was a thing. We don't know. He doesn't know why we've announced it yet. It's. I think he said it had something to do with funding or something.
No,
Like
I
figuring out the budget. But
Yeah, he sounded a lot more cagey about that in the interviews this week. I think multiple people asked him where we'll see Checkmate next, and he didn't even really commit to seeing them in Man of Tomorrow, even though I think that it would be weird if they didn't. So yeah, I don't know if a Checkmate series is in the cards.
yeah,
Yeah, let's make one prediction for an unannounced DCU project.
yeah. Well, so my question is it technically unannounced, or might this be one of the ones that was floating post Superman,
Yeah,
where I know that we'd heard about potential Mister Terrific thing and a potential Jimmy Olsen thing. I wonder
you're
if
right.
one of those two things could be the mysterious project that he said that I don't know why we haven't announced it yet. Um, I think there's more chance that it's the Jimmy Olsen thing than that it's the Checkmate thing,
Yeah.
solely because, well, I don't know. I guess then when I think about it, he introduced Checkmate at the end of Peacemaker. He was making Peacemaker and Superman at the same time, so it's not like Peacemaker came considerably later than Superman. So technically, the planning for a spin-off of either of those things would have been happening simultaneously, regardless. So I suppose there's an equal possibility for either.
Uh, my prediction for unannounced thing is in the same category. It's something that has been talked about but hasn't been officially announced, and that's a Teen Titans movie or television show. I
Not
just
not related to the ones that already exist. You mean a new different thing?
Yeah, exactly. I think that
Yeah.
I mean apparently there was a script in the works by the writer of Supergirl and Wonder Woman. I think that Teen Titans is a great property to exist in this world just because um, it kind of creates that um, connection to lots of other heroes that we want to see, but maybe we've overseen. So like
Mm,
you can have a Teen Titans that has Kid Flash on the roster, and we don't have to worry about like you know the adult Flash, being a member of the Justice League or whatever, like the same with, having Robin on the team or, I just think there's lots of opportunities to have a roster that is reflective of lots of different corners of the DC universe. You can have a magic person, an alien person, the tech guy or whatever. And it's just a fun, like just kind of, grab bag of, characters and personalities, and again, like just corners of the DC universe. That is a lot of it's a rich playground. You don't have to necessarily do the iconic team from Teen Titans Go or the Marv Wolfman roster, although that's the one everybody would want to see. There's just lots
yeah.
of different ways you can go about it, and I think that would be a really great property to introduce into the universe.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you. I think it would be a totally good pick. My only question would be because they've got the Boy Wonders movie
Yeah,
coming out and they're talking about Brave and the Bold, would they have a third potential, well, fourth potential Robin, since there's
yeah,
two Robins in the one and
yeah.
another Robin in the other? Like, I know he said people can keep track of two Batmans. Can they keep track of four Robins, though?
That's a really funny question because I think famously the DCU has like so many legacy characters that at any one point there are three Green Lanterns in this universe, And
Yeah, that's
there
fair.
will
Already,
potentially,
yeah, they've already established them. Yeah, that's a good point.
but that's just kind of the norm in the DC universe, so which like, it's fun to kind of think about. Uh, cool. All right. Well, let's move a little bit to Marvel, and then we'll kind of go from there. So there was the New York Comic Convention where Marvel Television had a panel and announcements. Nothing new was announced. I think everything that was announced were things that had been already previously announced, but we started to see trailers, we started to see casting announcement, things like that. Do you want to take us just kind of property by property on that one?
Yeah, well, the ones that I remember.
Sure. Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I'm not gonna lie. There's an eclipse for me. I think I've mentioned I'd go on record as the best of the Netflix superheroes Marvel stuff that came out
Yes.
for me was Jessica Jones, and the fact that Jessica Jones is not only coming back, we know she's coming back for Daredevil, but in a significant enough role that they have her front and center. They have
Yeah.
Kristen Ritter out talking about the show. Excites me a great deal because my fear going into season one was that we were going to get like a nod and a wink of John Bernthal as the Punisher, just enough to let you know he exists, but we're testing the waters to see what we think. And he was actually in more than I thought. He was in a couple of different episodes and like very heavily in one, in a very good story. So if they're putting Kristen Ritter out even more than they had Bernthal out before the premiere of the first season, it makes me feel like her presence and significance in the story is pretty great, and that makes me really happy because I think she's a perfect cast for that character. But I also think the first season of Jessica Jones was the high watermark for everything that Netflix Marvel ever did. I think that was a spectacular show, so I'm very excited. So there is that, obviously, and then speaking of Bernthal, we knew that he was showing up in Brand New Day, but there's been all kinds of scuttlebutt about who the character of Sadie Sink was going to be, and
Right.
you kept sharing stuff with me that I think was very funny. We've sort of watched the weird evolution of how certain
Exactly.
everybody
Yeah.
was of exactly what she was going to be, and how quickly they turn 90 degrees as soon as a new piece of information comes out.
Yeah. Uh, do you have an expectation that she'll be in the Punisher special?
Oh, that's a good question. I think is that coming out before Brand New Day though?
It hasn't been announced. I thought it was going to be a end of 2025 release, like a Christmas themed release. Just end of year. I don't mean Christmas holiday theme. I just mean the end of year. But no, they haven't announced when it's coming out, so who knows?
Hmm.
But yeah, there's potential there. On both those TV shows and specials, I do think what excites me is I don't think it will be very significant, but the potential for the two of both Daredevil season two and the Punisher special to have some kind of connection to the Spider-Man movie that comes out next year is very fun to me. I hope that it is more than a nod. I hope that it's more than just like a piece of like set decoration that references Daredevil or something. I hope that there is like some story thread that does connect some of those pieces because I think that's fun. I mean, that's why I like these things. Whenever like you can carry a story, from a TV show to the movie or to a special or something like that. I think that could be
Yeah.
really fun.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised for two reasons that there is stuff in the television versions because first of all we know the Kingpin, or at
Right.
least so what we've heard can't appear on the big screen, but he's a huge part of the Daredevil TV series and he's the mayor of the friggin' town that
Right.
Brand New Day is going to happen in. So I feel like there must be some level of addressing
Yeah.
that. Plus, we saw Bernthal's character come out of season one in a big way. He's basically a fugitive on the run at this point from Kingpin and company. So it would be weird that that didn't fold in. But then, to your point, there's like it's getting very top heavy with characters in Brand New Day right now.
Yes.
So it feels like some story is going to happen beforehand to explain at least a little bit of how we got 40 major characters in this movie.
Yeah. My hope for Brand New Day, I mean, we're transitioning a little bit, but it does connect. Um, I do think that Brand New Day has this potential to be a very New York City Spider-Man movie,
Hmm.
which and New York City. I think what's fun and exciting about that is that this New York City has a ton of superheroes in it, and has
Yeah.
a ton of supervillains. And I don't think that's ever really been portrayed to the extent that we're hoping it is portrayed. So what we're hearing is that there's multiple villains, that Scorpion could be in it, that Boomerang could be in it, that Punisher is an element of the story, and then
Tombstone, right? Tombstone's going to be in
Tombstone
it.
has been,
Yeah.
yeah, and then when it comes to Kingpin, I don't think Vincent D'Onofrio is going to be in the movie, but it wouldn't be unheard of for them just to reference Mayor Fisk or something. I think that's
Right.
probably something they could do. One of the other rumors going around is that Florence Pugh's character Yelena is going to be in the movie. I don't know how much credence to put to that, but if she is, I mean, maybe that makes sense because Avengers Tower is in New York City, so maybe the new Avengers are make a cameo or something.
Mm.
And again, I don't know that that's going to happen or likely, but I do love the idea that Peter Parker's Spider-Man is having a fun adventure in New York City, and this New York City is the Marvel New York City. I think that that's hasn't been done before. I think.
Yeah. Well, here's what it makes me think of. I remember a friend of mine telling me a story about his uncle was blind and he'd never been able to drive a car. And then one time they went on vacation. They went to the Utah Salt Flats where there's
Hmm.
nothing for miles in any direction, right? So there was nothing for him to slam into. And then
Yeah,
they just let him get behind the wheel of the truck and they were in the truck with him and they let him drive because what the hell could possibly go wrong? There's nothing to run into. I feel like Spider-Man Brand New Day is coming right before two movies about Doctor Doom that are
right.
essentially going to be a hard reset for the entirety of the Marvel Universe. I feel like Spider Man Brand New Day is kind of like the blind uncle in the Salt Flats. Like, there's nothing to run into at this point. We can just have a big, grand time because most of what's going to happen in here is not ultimately going to matter in the long run of this universe because we're about to do a hard reset about some stuff, you know?
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. I also wonder, um, each Spider-Man movie we get feels like could be the last one before Sony just decides to like end their relationship with Marvel. So I think that also has an element to it too. They're like, okay, let's just do a kick-ass, Marvel set Spider-Man movie, because this could be the last one before Sony decides, okay, we're taking the ball back in our court. We're gonna do Miles Morales movies that are unconnected to the MCU. That could always happen, so
Yeah.
why not just make it a really kick-ass Spider-Man movie?
So, like, they're throwing in a Hell's Kitchen sink. Is that
Yeah.
what, is it, turn into a pun?
I'll take it. So, speaking of underwhelming finales. My recollection of Daredevil season one was that people were really underwhelmed by the crew that Matt Murdock assembles at the end of that show to take on Kingpin. Everybody's question was, where is Jessica Jones? Where's Luke Cage? Where's Iron Fist or whatever? Uh, do you think that besides Kristen Ritter, do you think any of the other defenders will make an appearance?
Listen, I can only tell you I couldn't care less about Danny Rand if
Yeah.
I didn't know he existed.
What about
However,
Colleen Wing though?
so she was great, and she not
Yeah.
only was her character great, but the actress is phenomenal.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I would love to see her back. But the truth be told, the reason that I want any of this to work out is because as much as I think Jessica Jones season one was the best and Kristen Ritter was fantastic, Mike Coulter is a
Yeah.
huge star waiting to be allowed on the big screen. That man is. He's as charismatic as anybody I've ever seen. If anybody's ever watched the TV show Evil, he just
Yeah.
he's unbelievable. So I'm so excited about the idea that if we're getting Kristen Ritter, they're open to the idea of expanding past Daredevil and, it was already expected because of Punisher, because even though he was introduced in Daredevil, he had his own series. But they've expanded now to take people who didn't even really appear in Daredevil much, which is Kristen Ritter. So I really hope Mike Coulter's coming back. And I can understand everybody would want that at the end of season one, but Daredevil is also the first, I believe, non-animated or live action series that they intend to continue forward, like
Right.
having new
Yeah.
seasons continuously. So I understand them not wanting to like fire all of their bullets at the end of the first season. You know what I mean? So yes, is it disappointing that Daredevil walked in and it was just a room of like five regular ass humans? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of disappointing. But also that maybe that's what season two is for. You know what I mean? That's the
Yeah.
the gathering, the team scene. You know?
Okay. Uh, Here's why I admit I actually didn't finish season one of Daredevil Born Again. I only watched the first few episodes, so but I'm going to make a confident prediction nonetheless. So my confident prediction for Daredevil Born Again season three is that they wrap the Wilson Fisk um, storyline where he declares martial law. He gathers a bunch of heroes, they defeat him, and we wrap. Season three is the Midnight Suns season. You heard it here first.
First and potentially only.
Ghost Rider, Blade, Moon Knight, they form a team. That's what I think.
I would love that, man. As long as I get a promise that Danny Rand is not going to be allowed to be part of it. But yeah, no,
uh,
well, I think I told you that was one of the first comic books I ever read that was not X-Men. You introduced me to X-Men, and the
no,
first comic that I read that was not an X-Men comic was
yeah,
one of the Midnight Suns issues.
yeah.
It's the first
I
time I ever
remember.
saw Blade and Ghost
Yeah,
Rider. That was the Danny Ketch era. But yeah, that was the first time I read, and I was like, "Holy crap! This is like hardcore horror. This is
yeah.
awesome."
I have very fond memories of Ghost Rider number 25 with the metallic cover that I think it was like the first time Danny Ketch and Johnny Blaze had teamed up or something. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, I remember that comic very
Oh man.
fondly.
Yeah, no, I'll be chasing that one for a while, man. That will be, you know how like normally you're the like the enormous fan in the conversation.
Sure,
I'm kind
yeah.
of like I just like movies. I will be all about the Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns and Justice League Dark are the two that I'm
Yeah.
most excited about because those are the ones that lean into horror in interesting ways that most other comics don't. So,
So would you accept it as part of Daredevil or do you want it to be its own thing?
listen, we've waited so long to get it. I'll take it wherever you give it to me.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as it's not like a sequel to the Man Thing movie that
Right.
Leonard made. But yeah, I think I thought we were. When Werewolf by Night came out, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
is this the beginning of the? Are we going in that direction?" And then nothing since.
Yeah.
And then it felt more like, "Oh, this was a fun, like one-off that they gave Michael Giacchino because he's a huge fan and also has written all of the greatest music in the Marvel universe, so we got to give him
Yeah.
something." So it didn't feel like a continuation. But yeah, I honestly I like the idea of Daredevil because of bringing it in Daredevil because he is the sort of grounded element that can allow that stuff
Yeah.
to feel like it is still a real thing. Like if we just started a thing and it went from zero to Ghost Rider and Blade working together, feels
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a lot to bite.
Yeah, I think I don't think he's traditionally been thought of as a potential member of the Midnight Suns, but I don't know. Sounds cool to me. I think it could be really cool.
I mean, like he is the devil. Like it's
Yeah, there you go.
there's certainly branding to go with it. So
Yeah. Last question on this front: does Dane Whitman's Black Knight make an appearance?
dude, I'm gonna be honest. I don't believe we will ever see anything that happened in
Yeah,
the Eternals movies ever again. Like I'm like genuinely like I know you're more confident than I am that we're gonna get a Blade movie eventually. I don't even know that
yeah,
that's gonna happen. Like this is for me. That's the weirdest field goal no one ever kicked.
yeah,
Like this should be the simplest thing in the world. So the fact that they can't get that right, it does make me wonder if at a certain point they're just like, I don't know, it's too
yeah,
easy. We're gonna I don't know, we're gonna go somewhere else because it's crazy to me that they still haven't done that. So no, I can't
yeah.
imagine they can't get Blade. No, they're not going to do that.
Okay. I guess as far as other things that were announced, the second season of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, second season of X-Men '97. On the live action front, we have Wonder Man coming up in January, and we have Vision Quest later in the year. Um, I think I don't have a ton of predictions on the animation front. I think both of those shows are ones that I really enjoyed, so I'm really excited to see where they come. Um, Wonder Man seems like it'll be fun. I do think that everything that we saw in that trailer was probably like an episode one compilation of clips, because I do think that so the setup of Wonder Man is he's an actor auditioning for the part of playing Wonder Man in a remake of a I don't know, 70s or 80s superhero flick. They do have fun at the notion of superhero fatigue. That's something that has come up in some of the in the marketing for that show. I think it's fun. I don't know how much I'm going to love that show. I think it looks interesting, but like I said, I do think that the setup is out of work actor auditioning for this part. The trailer that they showed doesn't have any superhero elements in it whatsoever, but we do know that his brother is in the show, who is in the comic books the character the Grim Reaper. I do think that they are hiding the fact that he probably either has powers or will get powers and then actually become an actual superhero, in the course of the show. So I don't know. That's interesting to me. I mean, that also has the potential for it to become just kind of like a, by the numbers kind of story. So, uh, maybe we would prefer just a show about an out of work actor. I don't know. But,
Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
think so. I think that my confident prediction about Wonder Man is that what we're going to end up finding out is the way that he gets powers is because of the director. You know, we saw the director, like he's
Yes.
supposed to be this
Yeah.
famous
Yeah.
sort of Kubrickian type character. I
Right.
wonder if the origin of his superpowers is that like the director is so method that he
Right.
basically sends the guy to get powers because that's the only way he can play the character. And so that's how Wonder Man ends up with his powers. I will say an interesting thing. There's the two shows you mentioned, Vision Quest and Wonder Man. Both seem like they're like split pieces of the same attempt that Marvel was doing with Fantastic Four, which is
Hmm.
I feel like there's a two pronged approach of the first one being um, uh, go how would I say it? One direction is nostalgia, which is like leaning into the
Yeah.
sort of the Silver Age, which is what Wonder Man's doing a little bit. With the old show, you know that it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
original Wonder Man, so they're leaning into this nostalgia, and then Vision Quest is also leaning into the nostalgia in a different way, but like it's nostalgia for the old Marvel. Like they're
Yeah.
talking about all of these sort of like ancillary little AI things that we've met along the way, like having sort of grown up in a way, and it's run by Terry Matalas, who did
Yeah. Right. Right.
Picard, which was looking back on the era of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It feels very much like Marvel is trying to decide between one of two things. How do we fix superhero fatigue, but also how do we make you remember how much you liked us a little while
Yeah.
ago? You know,
Yeah.
and like that feels like the two pronged approach is the nostalgia and also like the calling it out, which is what Wonder Man is doing. It's like calling out the fatigue at the same time that it's trying to do something different. So I think both of those shows are kind of continuing the tenuous conversation they started with Fantastic Four, which didn't go as well, I think, as they hoped.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it was going to be a bold new direction. So I don't know. Those both feel like shows that were attempting to continue the conversation Fantastic Four started. And if that conversation wasn't going well, I don't know what that means for those two shows. You know?
Yeah, Vision Quest is an interesting one to me because we don't really know what the story is. We have casting announcements, and we know that Ultron returns, so we assume he's the antagonist of the series. I think that's interesting, not necessarily because of Ultron as a very compelling villain, but just because James Spader is playing him and he's a great actor. So that
Yeah.
should be fun. But again, we don't really know what the story is other than well, we have hints. You know, the elements we have are we have a Vision who lost his memories and emotions and is kind of trying to, uh, reconfigure himself to his past self. We have the character of Tommy, who was his son from a different dimension or whatever, and has now returned as a teenager, and so to search for Tommy, I guess, is an element of it. We have him interacting with other AIs, that we saw throughout the Marvel universe. But all of that, like, that's just this soup. We don't really know what the
Right.
story is. So I'm still kind of keeping an open mind on that one because I don't, obviously, like I said, we don't know what the story is. The irony is that the Vision had an award-winning, amazing comic run by Tom King, who we see a lot of next year in both Lanterns and Supergirl. He did the Vision series where the Vision created a suburban family with a wife and two kids. Really great, um, kind of Twin Peaks-ish type, surreal, look at suburban life, just through the lens of these synthezoids. It's a great comic run. I think a lot of people expected that to be somewhat of the basis for a Vision series, and maybe it will. But a lot of that stuff kind of was already done um, in WandaVision, the suburban family thing. So I don't have a huge expectation that that will be an element of Vision Quest. Yeah,
So okay, yeah. So that covers Vision Quest and that covers Marvel TV. There wasn't much else that Marvel covered, and there was nothing that DC covered
that's
because, of
right.
course, James Gunn said it's not worth showing up.
Yeah, and he's probably right, but they have to have an announcement strategy that isn't just putting stuff on Instagram.
Yeah,
Because you know what? We all want the big announcements. We want the Hall H, here are the next 10 movies thing, which,
yeah.
obviously can bite them in the ass, but that's what we want anyway, right?
Well, we all want 10 dudes dressed as Brainiac to come out on stage, right?
Oh
And
my
then
God, yeah. Uh, I feel like for some reason, Tom Hiddleston arriving at Comic Con as Loki was an iconic thing that people talk about all the time, but less so was The Rock showing up as as Black Adam. I don't think that one is remembered as fondly.
No, but now that James Gunn is going to get kicked out of DC after they
Oh
sell
yeah.
Warner Brothers, maybe The Rock will finally get his chance to change the hierarchy of the DC universe.
Yeah. What's your, maybe we can close there. What's your confident prediction on the possibility of them just picking right back up where they left off with Henry Cavill versus The Rock following that, you know, incredible tease?
Yeah, man. So this is the most confident prediction I could literally ever give, which is
Yeah.
that even if they decided tomorrow they weren't going to keep making James Gunn stuff, there
Yeah.
is no way in God's blue earth that they go back to the thing that already wasn't working to the degree that they had to hire a dude from Marvel to fix it. There's no way they go back to that. That's
Uh,
insane.
I agree with you, but I will tag on that confident prediction that even though that will never come to pass, in our lifetime, we will probably see an AI version of that brought to life by somebody.
Oh, for sure. Well, Amazon is creating a program right now where we
Yeah,
can get that made ourselves, right?
sure. So I said in our lifetime, I'm going to guess in the next 12 months, we'll probably see the epic Black Adam Superman fight that we never got to see. And it'll be on YouTube. And, you know, you can probably guess the quality of it.
Yeah. I mean, arguably as good as Black Adam, frankly.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Well, let's close it there. Great episode. What do you think we will be talking about next?
You want me to make a confident prediction about the next confident predictions we're going to do?
Yes, about the next episode. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think I'm trying to think of what's the next big thing that we want to talk about. Like, I'm trying to think, is there a big
Yeah.
Christmas release? And there
Yeah,
is there? I don't
I
think there
was looking
is.
at the schedule and I think Stranger Things is coming up soon. So there might be Stranger Things, but as I
Yeah.
said at the beginning, I don't know if I have a ton of predictions on that one. Wonder Man isn't until January. We definitely need to talk before then. So yeah, let's take a look and we will be back with some great new predictions, right?
Yes, and they will, as always, be 100% right. No matter what you think of them, they were right.
Awesome. All right, good talking to you, man. Talk to you later.
All right, man.